Again, we come together for fivesies. Another little chat. I've got my almost empty drink. Typically, my mother would be there with a glass of red wine.
Yeah.
And, chewing the fat, as she used to describe it. It's simply that time of coming together to talk, to share thoughts on something. And typically it was something that was meaningful. My mother was a very, very philosophical lady, very compassionate lady, and big reader. The conversations I used to be able to have with her and that I would eavesdrop when she had friends, just lovely the way it waxed and waned through many different things. So today, what are we going to chew the fat on? Good afternoon, come evening, young lady. How art thou on the other side of the country? Where are you tonight?
Hi, Keryn. I am in Doncaster in Victoria. I had to think about that for a minute. Yes, we are. We
You
are
sure on that?
inching closer and closer to the city, and had a beautiful couple of nights in the bush. I can't remember the name of the bush camp. Friday's campground it was called, but it was lovely. We had it all to ourselves, but now we're in the city, on the outskirts of the city, and it's a beautiful rainy afternoon outside, so it's lovely, nice and cozy.
Cool. Actually, I was talking with a client this afternoon who's in Hobart, and she was saying, she said, Keryn, it's lovely. It's raining outside, and the clouds are all low and misty. And I said, oh, how gorgeous. I said, it doesn't sound anything like summer. I said, how gorgeous. And she was loving it. So, it's obviously the rain is on that side of our country.
Yeah. And we had that mist a couple of days ago on the weekend, that sort of really sort of foggy, misty looking weather. It was lovely. It wasn't at all miserable like winter. And that's what I like about summer and rain. They go together very well. Thank you very much.
Well, young lady, great to see you again. We live in a joyous world that has this ability for us to connect digitally and to see and hear each other. Gone are the days where you'd go to a phone box if you were lucky and you'd dial the operator and it was an STD call and will you receive the charges, they'd say at the other end. And we had a thing in our family that the person would say no, but the whole idea of the call was, I'm alive and well, and this is where I am now. That was that message. I'm okay. I got here. And then, the call would just be dead. That was it.
We used to do that. Not so much you accept the calls. I think we might have done that too. Or we just phone up and hang up again because that was, they know that was us. Because otherwise you had to feed the money into the telephone. Didn't have that money in those days. No.
Those were the days. Honey, it's lovely. It's lovely to be chewing the fat with you at, no, it's not 5 o'clock yet, but it certainly is fivesies, as we have decided to call this get together. And I've got my glass of water and my frequency charged straw that I'll be sipping as we chew the fat. So what are we going to be talking about today? What's uppermost in your mind that you feel the listeners may glean, may benefit from hearing?
I have been thinking about how our worldview can we all have biases, and how our worldview can sometimes skew how we see situations and circumstances, oftentimes subconsciously, and how that starts to then rise to the conscious self. And when we can catch ourselves and think, well, hang on, is this really what I think it is, or is it actually, let's look at the situation in reality? And that's part of our I suppose, our soul journey, is to allow that self-awareness of who we are and what actually does affect us and our worldview to come bubbling up to the surface as our old beliefs get challenged, and we bring in the values that we live by rather than going by those old fears that were embedded as we grew up, generally like as from children to adolescent. And as practitioners, it's really important to be aware that when something is not so much that we have to say, oh, I have to work it all out before I start working, but to recognize when something starts to not quite make sense, and there's a part of us that wants to push that barrow. And when we listen to our intuitive self, our soul wisdom, when we stop and think, hang on, that doesn't feel okay. What's actually happening here? That is that personal growth that's going on, that says we are listening to our client and we are listening to ourselves. And through that, we strengthen the connection that we have with ourselves, with our client, and with life. And that way we're not stumbling around. In those moments, we become aware that we are part of something bigger, and that sometimes our subconscious self, which has now risen to the conscious part, makes decisions for us on our behalf, or pushes a barrow on our behalf without even realizing. And as I said, it might be, oftentimes it can be detrimental and can affect relationships and affect not only client practitioner relationships, but also personal relationships as well. So I guess about listening to what is in our body that says, hang on, that's not okay. That little tiny little nudge that says, I really want to just take a moment and tune into that and see what's actually bugging me. So I was going to ask you, Keryn, what is it when do you have those moments? And if you do, how do you recognize that that's actually nudging at you saying, hang on, this isn't matching up for me at the moment?
How long have you got? What I have come to appreciate, and what I really love about being 62 as opposed to 22, 32, 42, and even 52, it's this being able to look back on behavior, my
Mm,
behavior. And I'm not even going to go into client relationships. I'm talking about me and my journey and my
yeah,
adventure here,
yeah.
is appreciating that when I had a feeling, asking myself why. And it could be both, ones that made me feel wonderful and ones that didn't.
Mm,
And because we are here as individuals having a human experience, we are here to experience being a human. We're here to have an adventure. And I've been here many, 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 many times, and I know that you have too. However, this incarnation is the most important one because this is where we are.
well, this is where
And
we
we've
are. Yeah.
come to experience. And depending where you are in your soul's journey, in my opinion, as to what is happening, whether you're collecting information because you're a young soul, or as the old soul, you are bringing to conclusion things that no longer serve, relationships that no longer are for you,
Mm,
and playing the role as the sage in life from the collective's perspective. But to know that if I fire up, and the old me would always have my fingers pointing out, somebody fired me up, they did something. That would be my language.
yeah,
What did
yeah,
they do? I now appreciate going, okay, I can feel I'm fired up. Why is that? What has been activated within me to cause this? A button has been pushed. Why? And therein goes my learning. And I don't know how well I have been able to let go of stuff until that person pushes the button again.
yeah,
And I
yeah,
think, oh, bugger, it's still there. I've got to keep working. And typically, for me, family members
yeah.
are the ones that have the
Best.
ability
Yeah,
to push a button.
yeah,
And I can now after a little bit of working through, go, hey, thanks for showing me that there was still more work to be done. And it is that, the peeling of the onion, work in progress, whatever the terminology is.
Mm.
But we don't know, I don't know how far I've come until somebody pushes a button and I either have a reaction, which is, oh, got to get some work on that, Keryn, or I have a response, which means I've got more control over this interaction because it's
Yeah.
simply energy.
Yeah.
I can still see me in one of my psychologist's appointments that I had years ago when I was working through issues with my former husband. And I can still see myself sitting down and saying to the psychologist, my reactions are automatic. And she just smiled and said, no, they're not. And I say, but I don't think about them. And she said, well, that's different. She said, but they're not automatic. And it was this learning. And this, again, this is what we do. We come in, we learn how to live with, so we think, other people. Typically, it's parents and it's siblings. They're the one we need to learn
Yeah.
to hold us and all of that stuff. And it becomes a response that appears and feels automatic. But indeed, it's a learned reaction to a trigger. And can I shift that? The answer is yes. For some of them, it still may be really hard
Yeah.
work,
Yeah.
as
Those
in,
hard work. Yeah.
day after day after day.
Mm. Mm.
And sometimes for me, the response is, well, I just have nothing to do with that person anymore. Because it always takes two, Vicky. When we're talking about
Yes.
relationships, it takes two. It's
Yes.
me with me
Yeah. Yeah.
or me with other people.
Yeah. We can't know those triggers or those activations unless we have relationships outside of ourselves. Otherwise, we are
Absolutely.
living within an echo chamber.
Absolutely. And
Yes.
again, we are part of the natural world.
Yeah.
There is no animal that I'm aware of, not even a plant that I'm aware of, that lives in isolation.
Yeah. No. No. Everything is
So
connected.
why do
Yeah.
we think this
Mm.
wonderful thinking bit, and this here is our
Mm.
gift, supposedly, and for some, absolutely, for others, it can be, a gift that isn't very nice, until you get to master, shall we say,
Yeah.
this ability. Because the reality is, when we appreciate we are sovereign beings, we have the power to make a decision, to make a choice. Therein lies our freedom.
Yeah.
Therein lies our freedom. And that's as simple and as complex as it
Yeah.
sounds.
Yeah.
But it's my belief, and I'm starting to realize the more I deeply anchor into such a simple and complex belief, like, Keryn, you've got a choice to make. I had a choice to leave my marriage or not. That was my choice. Now, with every choice has consequences.
Yeah.
And it's accepting that if you go make that choice and go down that path, the consequences, you say, yes, they're mine. I made the
Yeah.
choice, therefore the consequences are mine.
Yeah.
But that ability to make a choice.
Yeah.
Oh,
It's
oh,
so powerful. It's a power back in our hands.
oh,
Once we
it's,
realize that we do have that choice, the power's back with
yes,
us.
oh,
I'm
and
a
it
big,
is,
yeah. Yeah.
yeah. And it's probably about, probably about a week ago, I came to the realization that, and this is going to sound funny, but my life is mine. And I looked at myself in the mirror and said, Keryn, this is your life.
Mm.
Everybody that is in your life, they have their life.
Mm.
And it was so almost unlibran sun like to go, no, this is my life. And I don't need to hold back because I might tread on somebody's toes.
Mm.
this is my life. And it's kind of, yeah, I kind of grew my
That's
wings a little bit more.
Yeah, I think that's the kind of epiphany or understanding that can occur once we understand that we are being activated, triggered by something. We work through it and we resolve that with, like, we reconcile that within ourselves, even without having to know. We know, for me personally, when I hear that, I'm hearing that you have moved through the whole process, and that understanding, that release, that this is your life, is almost like the prize at the end. It's like, oh, you got that back. And
Yes.
so, yeah, so
Yes.
you've worked through something to help you understand that this is uh,
Yeah.
your life is now back in your hands. And not that it wasn't always there. Our our conditioning that we were brought up with. And as you mentioned, we've lived many lives, and we chose the life that this
Hmm.
life. We chose the conditions, and we had those things imposed upon us and taught to us, conditioned to come to a conclusion, to reclaim that power within us, to live through those moments and understand that we actually do have that power. And in the meantime, it's like we replay on a loop the constant, um, like the constant, almost like a drama or uh, a trauma, and until we something shifts, and it doesn't matter what is, something will shift, and we'll realize, hang on, this isn't a good life. I don't like the way I'm behaving. I don't like the way I'm reacting, and I don't like the way that person is how they're behaving in my life as well. And you start to recognize that that's the opening, that's the conscious part of us, the unconscious conscious, if you like. And from that moment on, the discomfort that we feel is almost the driving force that compels us to please investigate what is the why. Get down to that thing, because otherwise, life is just, we can go along unconsciously, la la la, and it might be really not great, but we're unaware of how ungreat it is, how awful it is, until that pivot moment, and then we live in discomfort, and oftentimes our mind. I like to think that our soul shifts in that moment, but it's our mind and our body that is catching up to that understanding. And so we will fight tooth and nail, even for crappy situations, even when we know that we don't feel okay, but we don't really understand what we're giving up in order to have what's on the other side, because we don't know what's on the other side. We can have an inkling, but it's about that leap of faith. And
I believe at some level we do know what's on the other side, which is why we're
yes,
feeling
that's a
um,
good point. Yeah,
uncomfortable. All
I
right. I
agree.
will
Yeah,
often say to my
yeah,
clients when they say, "Oh, I don't know," I go, "Excuse
yeah,
me,
you
I
do.
want you to believe
Yeah,
at some level within you, you do know. Otherwise, you wouldn't have taken the decisions to
correct.
typically contact
Yeah,
me, contact somebody else.
yeah,
So there's knowing from a rational, logical
yeah,
brain perspective, and there's the knowing from that um, essence perspective. You know, that
yeah,
sentient perspective, that
yeah,
divine um,
correct. Yes,
you know, probably
yeah.
with okay. It's
I
and
think that, yeah, go on.
it's something that needs, for me, no proof,
Yeah,
no evidence, um, because no, it's like it's a truth with a capital T within me,
yeah, yeah,
and this is how we are made. This
yeah,
is for me intuition with a capital I
yeah,
that is saying this is yours.
yeah,
And it happens, I feel, more often than people are aware of, but
yeah,
it's being in that space, being in the present moment, in that space of vibing with that ping, that knowing, that little message that comes through. You've got mail, and you go, oh, okay, yeah.
I think
And
that,
then
yeah,
you may have some
yes,
thoughts around it, but it's It's that
yeah,
knowing at some
yeah,
level.
yeah,
And I'm going to say this is where I feel I'm blessed that I'm an air sign as a sun sign. So I don't get caught up in the thought process. However, I just go straight up, up and out, and I can get real floaty and
yeah,
lack grounding. But I've got friends that get caught in their mind and
yeah,
they go round and round and round and round and round, very Virgo sun like.
yes,
And
yeah,
it's like it's locked on a loop.
yeah,
And it's for them to find the way to break
yeah.
that loop.
Yeah, as you're talking to me, I, we do know because that we chose that change, that shift, that pivot. We chose it because we know life is going to be better on that other side. I think the fear comes from that. What's going to happen with the world that I built around that old part of me?
What's it going to cost
And
me, really?
what's it going to cost me? Correct. What relationships am I going to lose? Am I going to be left alone, or am I going to have to build something brand new? What is it going to cost me energetically, soul, physically, all those sorts of things? And that oftentimes, and also too, that the old rubbish or crappy situation that we're leaving behind has sustained us and kept us alive up until that point, until that moment says, well, we don't need that anymore.
We've
And
outgrown
so,
it.
yeah, we've outgrown it. And we know this, as you say, we know it
We
with a
do.
capital I and a capital T. Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And it's like, again, coming back to children,
Yeah.
children do not fear growing. From a newborn
No.
to one that
Yeah.
crawls, to one that walks, to one that's in grade one, to one that's in grade five. They're forever growing. They grow out of shoes, they grow out of clothes. Um, and, and typically with no resistance, there's an excitement about,
Yeah.
oh, look, I'm growing, I'm growing, I'm growing.
Yeah.
And really, what we are talking about is growing.
Yeah.
And yet we can get to a point where we want to stay in the same clothes. We want to stay sleeping in the same bed. We want to keep wearing those shoes. But the reality is, well, we can't.
Yeah.
We just can't do it anymore on that energetic level. The bandwidth's full and we want more.
Yeah. Yeah.
So it's, what do we throw out? It's There are times when there's a part of us that says enough is enough. For example, my suspected heart
Mm.
attack was the door that
Yeah.
I was just shoved through to say you're out of this
Yeah.
marriage. It's killing
Yeah.
you.
Yeah.
But it took that absolute physicality and shake for me to go, okay, okay.
Yeah. You
Keep doing
want
what
to
you
fight
always
for
done.
yourself. Yeah.
You keep getting what you always got.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, did I have to make a change? No, I chose.
Yes. Yeah.
Chose in that moment,
Yeah.
new path.
Yeah.
Did I know much about it? No, but I knew
Yeah.
my heart says you're out of here.
So that's
So many
I.
people,
Well,
have
they
that
don't.
difficult.
Yes, and they fight tooth and nail. Some people they'll just make the break, and some people don't. And um, it's not good or bad or a measure of that person. It just
Nope,
is
it's not. No,
how I start to think of it how important it is to you, and also like it's no failure if you sit in that sort of struggle for how long. There is no length of time that's right or wrong.
yeah,
What is I think important is that you give yourself the grace that every day that you wake up and say, this isn't okay, you're incrementally working towards that freedom and breaking away from the old. You never go back once the door is shut. You never go back. You're always, even if it doesn't feel like you're moving forward, you're always moving forward at the safest pace for yourself.
Look, absolutely. It's so many people can acknowledge what's not working.
Yep.
I then wait for what are you going to do about it?
Yeah. Yeah.
But the conversation is, I'm not liking this because blah 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 blah. I'm not liking this
Yeah.
because blah 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 blah. And they're describing the situation, and I get that. To acknowledge what is important. It's being given its time on the stage, but it doesn't have to live on the stage for the next 6.5 years. It's on the stage
Yeah.
now. What are you going to
Yeah.
do about it? And it's
Yeah.
that taking of action. My lovely intention plus action equals the magic. We
Yes.
need to take that action.
Yeah.
And if it's a little bit every day, it might simply be dreaming of this wonderful life that I'm going to have whilst I'm lying in bed being very unwell,
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
seeing ourselves
Yeah.
doing something different. It's the action bit. Okay, you're not liking life. What are you going to do about it? What can you do
Yeah.
right here, right now?
Yeah. Yeah. And we as practitioners support our clients through that process.
Absolutely,
Yeah.
absolutely.
Yeah.
We're
Yeah.
facilitators.
We're
We
facilitators. Yeah. We don't tell
um,
them what to do. We support them through the process.
mind you, I'll
It's
fess
really,
up and
yeah,
say years ago I would come across strong words. I feel I could come across as telling people what to do.
100%. Oh, me too. Yeah. Yeah.
I now,
Yeah.
again, age, thank you very much, and
Yeah.
also a lot of work on me,
That's it. Yeah.
accepting who I am. This is
Yeah.
who I am. And there are things that I know,
Yeah.
and unless somebody asks, Keryn, you don't share, Keryn.
Yeah. Yeah.
Okay, cool. But again, everything
Well,
in
that's
life,
full circle, isn't it? Yes. What's our worldview? What is our bias? How is it affecting our relationships and our relationship with ourselves as well? Yes, 100%. It's making me. We did have a bit of a chat before about doing pulling some cards, and it makes me think about tarot. All the situations that we're talking about
oh,
have cards that relate in a tarot.
yep.
So um, that um, that moment of understanding would come. That would be the struggle would be the chariot. That moment of understanding. Well, I was just trying to think of oftentimes it can be the Five of Cups. I'm trying to think about the major arcana. It's not coming to me at the moment, but just that epiphany of, hang on, this. Sometimes it can be traumatic. It can be the Death card, but
But the
that
death, I mean, we're in a space right now,
transformation, yeah, of death,
with
yeah,
Pluto having settled into
yeah,
Aquarius now for the next 17 odd years.
yeah,
Beware, folk, that things are going to be suddenly
yeah,
changing
yeah,
because I learnt yesterday, first world problem, forgive me, but my hairdresser salon
yeah,
is closing. Now, I've had this
yeah.
lady in my life for 18 years. I was not
That's
prepared.
I know. That's
You know,
grief.
it's,
That's 100% grief. Yeah,
um, and, I laughed at her and I said, look, this is a little bit like when my mother suddenly passed, which was a few
yeah,
years ago now, but I was surprised because I didn't expect mum to die. Mum was mum, mum
wow,
was always there, and it was just never part of my awareness.
yeah,
And
yeah,
my hairdresser is always my dentist, always there.
yeah, yeah,
And I don't think of it's going to change. So, yes, it's so there are girls in there now that have lost their job,
yeah,
and we're coming up to
yeah.
Christmas, and it's closing January next year. They were told last week,
Wow, wow.
and that's typical Pluto in
Yeah,
Aquarius. Because I was talking to my gorgeous hairdresser, and I was saying, look, you need a break, don't you? And she said, oh my gosh. She said, yes, I've been planning how to slowly get out of it. And I said, well, you've been thrown through the door. And she said, yes, I have.
yeah, yeah,
It's seeing all of the possibilities, talking about perspective.
yeah,
Okay, people have lost their job. Now, Why? How can they
Yeah.
see it? Is it the end of the world? No. But you
No.
can't find yourself a new position if you're still linked to the old job.
Yeah. Yeah.
You know, it's
Oftentimes when those things happen, those big things happen, and we sort of, it's a bit of a shock to us, we can look back
absolutely.
once the dust settles, we can look back and see the patterns of how we were actually separated from that job or from that position very subtly. Yeah, those little strands have been taken away, and that's that unconscious magic at work. You know, just helping
Absolutely.
us along. Yeah, yeah,
And again, our perspective, we don't see it because we're not
yeah,
looking for it. We're not asking the questions.
yeah,
We are disconnected from ourselves and living life on that
yes.
treadmill. So, what question are you going to ask for the card pull that
Well,
you're
I was
doing?
actually just quickly looking for the card I wanted to talk about. I'll pull a card. I will. It's probably the very last. No, I can't find it. I'm going to pull a card. Because I
Okay.
think I would like to, of all the things that we've talked about, we're connecting, and we've got a beautiful energy flowing. I'll pull a card about to give a perspective on the
On.
energy of what we're talking, on the energy of what we're talking about, on change, biases, change, and like trusting that self, that big T, that big I, trusting the intuition, and when the when things start to, when we start to, sometimes it's a big shock, like your hairdresser. Sometimes it's just little tiny movements that happen, and we tip over the edge. That it's not the end of the world. That it's the beginning of the next part, even
May I
as
make a
hard as it
suggestion
is.
here?
Yes,
Would you pull a card on how to cope with change?
yes. Ten of Wands.
King of Wands?
So ten of Wands. Let me just
Ten of
show
Wands,
that.
okay.
Yeah. So in this picture, you can see he has all of these responsibilities on his shoulder. And the
Mm-hmm.
10, of course, is coming to the conclusion. The 10 is the last card in the cycle, and
Okay.
it also adds up to number one. So it's the new beginning
So
as
it's the
well,
end and the beginning.
and the beginning of the next cycle. And so with the 10 of Wands, how to cope with change is that we start to understand where we played a role in placing all of those responsibilities on our shoulders. We start to understand, well, hang on, we've been carrying those responsibilities around with us forever, and now all of a sudden, hang on, I've got all this stuff on me. Where is it time for me, and what was my part in creating that? What I took on all of those roles, responsibilities, or all of that extra work, if you like. Oh, sorry. Now, I like to how to move through that. This person got what they wanted. They worked very hard to get there, and they're not satisfied with what they got. So oftentimes the change will come from, I did all the right things, I ticked all the right boxes. Why am I not happy? And so we exhaust a particular cycle or timeline. We take it to the end, and now the change. And so I think about this card whenever this pops up as, remember that game Pick Up Sticks?
Mm-hmm.
Or
I
is that
do.
you don't just go and just divest yourself. It's very important to address things one by one stick at a time, one responsibility at a time, and starting from the outside of the easiest. So in other words, look at the things that are easier to divest yourself of. What are the things that um, you can take care of straight away? Because what can happen is that we can, as you mentioned, we can understand and recognize our role, other people's role, how we got here, the why, that very core thing, and we want to address that straight away, but we forget of all those layers that have actually built up around us to bring that understanding to us. So it's about doing the easy stuff first, the things that we think, oh, I can worry about that later. Or more often than not, and I've found this a lot when people come to me for a reading, I've got this change happening, blah, 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 and I'll say, but I want you to look over here for now. Yes, yes, I understand this is going on here. And sometimes I can't even see what they're talking about in their energy field. What they're showing me are the things that uh, that's going to be most beneficial to them if they place their attention there. And so the Ten of Wands is teaching us that when it comes to change, is that we take care of that thing that is actually almost like in our face, even if it's as simple as I've got to go and change the batteries in my torch. You know, we might have had to change our job, but you know, the process might be, that damn torch. Every time I turn it on, needs new batteries. That could be the thing that starts the ball rolling. Never discount even the small things. It doesn't matter, and that if that's the thing that's bugging you, then that's what you address. And more often than not, it's a little tiny thread that you pull that unravels everything so seamlessly and so simply. So, yeah, just
Absolutely.
like, yeah,
As you were talking, I was seeing that
yes,
wonderful elephant in the room, and how do you
yes,
get rid of the elephant in the room? One bite at a time.
at a time. Yes, perfect. Oh, I got goosebumps with that one. Yeah, that's
It's,
perfect. Yeah,
I will often say to clients when they're coming for a session and I send them a text to say, hey, looking forward to seeing you. What do you want to focus on? And they'll write back, and because they've, particularly people that have worked with me often, they know that I'm going to say to them, what's sitting in front of your face? What is that thought that is just, it's
yeah,
not about size. It's about, there is something that is bugging you.
mm,
And that is what we will work on. Now, the fact that that might link in because everything is connected and everything is
connected.
energy,
Yeah,
they initially sign up with me to go, look, I'm really struggling with migraines. And yet there's a relationship at work. This person is just
yeah,
pissing them off. And I go, right, let's
yeah,
work on that. And I
yeah,
know that magic will happen because their higher self can orchestrate what's going to be cleared and open up pathways of flow. And suddenly, oh my goodness, I'm not suffering headaches as much as I used to. And I go, interesting, isn't it? It's,
yes,
we think we know. And the reality is, the knowing comes from our heart. I know
yes,
they know, and I want them to know they know,
yes,
but
yeah,
chances are it ain't going to be up here. It's
yeah,
not going to be
yeah,
a logical, typical, yes, but I signed up for you for headaches, but I've been getting shocking abdominal pain lately. And I go, fine, if
yeah,
that is what is uppermost in your mind, top
yeah,
of that thought list, there's a reason why.
yes,
Even though
yeah,
it appears to be a thought, not all thoughts, in my opinion, are generated from a head. It's kind of like this energy appears in the head, so therefore it must have come from the brain. And I'm going, no,
no, no,
it's for me, it doesn't work that way.
yeah, yeah. The thoughts that come through, and this is how I teach people to check whether that thought is something that is helpful or whether it is a hindrance. And this was taught to me once upon a time: is you take that thought in your mind and you place your head into your heart, and you take that thought into your heart. If that thought is something that is helpful or can be followed through on, or is actually, even if it's an anxiety or a worry, what is your body telling you? And more often than not, the body will just relax. Okay, yeah, everything's going to be okay. If I address this, the outcome is going to be fine. And it doesn't matter. Oh, it's going to be perfect. I say fine. And it doesn't matter. It doesn't have to be our idea of what we think a good outcome is. Our soul is telling us that if we address this, and it all just leaves, and then the next thing can come up to be addressed, and all just leaves. So just that simple, think about it, place it in your heart, and if when the body relaxes, oh yeah, okay, I can go ahead. If, and very rarely, but sometimes this happens, the body will get more tense. Then more often than not, they are forcing something, they're putting something in front of what's actually meant to be to help them out. They're trying to do that thing rather than listening to what's going on here. So we talk about, okay, well, that's actually not the thing to be addressed right now because it's tensing your body up. It's not going with any flow. Let's put that to one side. What else what else is coming up, or what else is it that you're thinking about? Even if it's totally unrelated, same. But that simple exercise and connecting to the heart or connecting to that inner part of us is so profound and so simple that when you do it, nothing else, it doesn't matter. It doesn't matter how hard it is or how weird it is or, impossible, all those sorts of things.
No.
With that, by doing that, we start the process. That could be the action. That could even be the first action. Just put it into your heart and see how you feel about it. So there.
Yep. Now, look, that's powerful. I will
Yeah.
share with clients the idea of a slide that connects the brain to the heart. So if they're caught in their head, I
Oh,
say, right,
yes.
as a little kid, and it's
Yeah.
always a red slide, and it can be as curly whirly as it likes. I said, climb up, get onto the top of that slide, and go wee, and see yourself plopping down into your heart space. So you know how
Yeah.
I used to just go plop off
Yeah.
there.
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
when you're in your heart space, you're in this little oasis. Okay, so they've set up this wonderful. Typically, there's water, there's sand, there's greenery, and when you see yourself down there, everything changes. It,
Everything.
it, it
Yeah.
just does. It's kind of like
Yeah.
whatever you were thinking of doesn't, it's gone.
It doesn't
I go,
exist. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, it doesn't
Yeah.
exist. And for those
Yeah.
people that struggle to visualize, I ask them to simply put both their hands on
On the
their heart
heart.
chakra,
Yeah.
so over their
Yeah.
sternum. And that physical contact and
Yeah.
breathing in and
Yeah.
breathing out, again, it takes the oxygen out of the head. And that literally the voice that's in there
Yeah. Yeah.
has gone.
Yeah.
And then I ask them, right now, tell
Yeah.
me what it is you'd like to talk about. And not an issue in the world.
It's yeah.
Because our heart
Yeah.
knows,
Knows. It knows.
just
It
knows.
just yeah. Yeah.
And again, going back to little kids know before they
No.
have the ability to think logical and rational thoughts, everything that they would say was theirs, particularly little kids. They know what they like, they know what they don't like, because it feels good or it doesn't feel good.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's we're amazingly magical creatures and
We are.
creations.
Yes. We are
We really, really
when
are.
we allow ourselves to be that magic. We just sink into it and be in our hearts. And then I just love it because it spreads through the body and then it goes out into the aura. And that's when we connect and it just ripples out to everything and everybody around us, everyone that
And
we
this
connect
is
with.
where playing with life, literally playing with life, having fun, a bit like you going out to the music festival, you're
Yes.
in your element and you
Yeah.
can't help but be magical
Yes.
because
Yeah.
suddenly everything is coming from that heart space because your
Yes.
creative energy is
Yeah.
flowing.
You enjoy.
People
Yeah.
don't have to work at being magical as far as I'm concerned. It's getting out
No.
and connecting with the world. I had
Mm-hmm.
such a joy of going out to my rose bushes this morning and these
Yeah.
three magnificent deep red buds, kind of like they'd just opened up overnight. And I thought, oh, they're here, come on in with me. And I asked the bush permission and I cut them. And, I've got now a
Yeah.
vase of 5 and the
Yeah.
aroma is stunning. They're old school roses. I just thought, oh, and didn't know what was happening in the world because there were some roses for me to bring in and fill my little room with joy.
True. The moments
Little
of joy.
thing,
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
little thing, and we
Transport
go back.
us. Yeah.
It's those little things
Yeah.
that we say are little, but it's almost exponentially. They're just
Profound.
huge,
They're
and
profound.
it's
Yeah.
it's
Yeah.
again sunrise, sunset,
Yeah.
rain,
Yeah.
just beautiful. Oh, young lady, I think that we'd better bring this conversation, this
Yeah, I
chewing of
can
the
feel
fat.
the energy closing down. Yes, lovely. Thanks, Keryn.
So thank you very much for sharing your tarot card.
Yeah,
I think that
anytime.
might be a nice thing to introduce to our
I think that
um,
we will do that. Yeah,
chats
yeah,
as we move along, because there are messages come from the universe in many, many, many different ways. And
yeah,
for me, the tarot decks, the oracle decks, whatever we choose to call them, messages contained within a card. It can be in a book. It can be the way that nature will suddenly fly by,
yeah,
or
yeah.
a ladybird that you see, whatever it is.
Mhm.
Messages come in many, many, many different forms.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
tarot is something that I've always been in awe of, but it's something I've never gone down the path of. The oracle decks, yes, but
Yeah.
I've never given myself the space and the time to study tarot.
Well, think about this, Keryn, that those moments, whether we're looking at the tarot or the oracle or having that special moment in nature, they are the channels that allow us to open up that spirit part of ourselves and connect to that spirit part of ourselves. And we're able then to channel it through that experience, or that um, through the card, or as you said, looking at the beautiful roses today. They are
Whatever
the
it is.
tool. That's right, the tool to channel that beautiful connection that we have with spirit and with each other. Yeah.
Yeah,
So
now
yeah,
therein lies magic, because
yes,
I can't not look at my roses and just feel this feeling.
yeah, yeah.
Or I bought myself a couple of new decks, Oracle decks yesterday. Merry Christmas, Keryn. And one of them in particular, I
Yeah,
really, really love, and it's all about time travel. And
yeah.
I was fascinated by the way in which the cards connected with me. And they're by Denise Lynn,
Oh, yeah,
and
she's good. Yeah, yeah,
it's a new
yeah,
deck of hers. And again, there
yeah,
was something about it. And
yeah,
give me time travel. I love going back into past lives, which is just another way of saying time travel, really. But yeah, just beautiful. And I was
yeah,
fascinated at my energetic
yeah,
response to the cards, whereas the other deck, which is an Egyptian deck, was engaging my head, and I think I
yeah,
was just not in the right space.
yeah, yeah.
So yeah, when you're connected,
You do.
because you're
Yeah,
lost for words, because it's all about the feels.
yeah. There are no words. Yeah, yeah, yeah.
Yep, there are no words
100%.
sometimes when spirit gets involved, because you can't describe it.
No,
But you can feel it.
can feel
Oh,
it. The
I
words
love.
just, I think, yeah, the words just diminish it. Yeah,
Well, the words are so confining.
yeah,
Just
yeah,
say, but the
yeah.
feels. Oh,
Mm.
it's like that glorious. Oh. Thank you, young lady. So, as we like to say, we'll meet again one day. And thanks for the chewing the fat with me, honey.
Yes, thank you, Karen. It's been lovely. Thanks for spending time with me on the interwebs today again too. I
See
love
you
it.
somewhere
Yeah.
else in the
Yes.
big wide world.
In the next destination.
Take care, honey. See you.
Bye.
Good afternoon, come evening, young Miss Vicky. How you doing, honey?
Hi, Karen. I'm very well, thank you.
Sentence. Oh, wow, Australia's got Alps.
I know.
All right, my love, big hugs to you. Thank you very much for chewing the fat with me today.